Today we are going to continue our discussion. Okay. Last lecture we discussed Shakespeare's origins, and we started with giving general information about different theories about Shakespeare. Okay. Today we are going to quickly revise what we have mentioned earlier, and as I told you, revise what things we have said earlier. The first thing that we are going to start with is the authorship question. As I told you earlier, authorship question refers to the debate over whether the literary works credited to William Shakespeare were truly written by him or by someone else. Actually, we have many critics who discussed the idea that Shakespeare the idea that the name Shakespeare is not accurate, and that someone else wrote all the works attributed to Shakespeare under this name. So the question that we raise now is, who wrote Shakespeare? The works attributed to Shakespeare. We have, as I told you, many theories. Today we are going to revise it quickly. Some of these theories, okay? First of all, we have a group of critics called the Stratfordians. The Stratfordians, those who believe that Shakespeare wrote all the works attributed to him. This group of critics is called the Orthodox, okay? In other words, the Orthodox are those who believe that Shakespeare, the name Shakespeare is the real name of the author who wrote all the great plays and sonnets that we learn about. On the other hand, we have another group which is called anti-Stratfordians. The word Stratfordians is taken from the village where Shakespeare was born. This group of critics is called because they believe that someone else wrote the works attributed to Shakespeare. In other words, they reject the idea that Shakespeare is the real author, and the authorship question for them is discussed in suspicions. This group of people is called the heretics, and the group is divided into many subcategories, and we have many groups under the name anti-Stratfordians. We have a group of critics who said that Baconians who support the idea or the argument that Francis Bacon is the real person. Okay, so the real name of the real author is Francis Bacon. We have another group of critics who argue that the real person is the heir of Oxford. This group is called Oxfordians. Why? Because they support the argument that the heir of Oxford is the real author. Another group is called Marlowean. They support that Christopher Marlowe, the famous Elizabethan dramatist, is the real person who wrote all the plays credited or attributed to Shakespeare. Finally, we have another group. It's called a groupist. It's called what? A groupist. They believe that Shakespeare had help from other people. So this is, in other words, the major theories concerning the idea of the authorship of a question. So now let's say, why is there an authorship question in the first place? What's the reason behind this argument and behind these varied approaches or theories regarding this great writer? Actually, we have here a main point summary of the major reasons behind this. Number one, we have huge gaps in Shakespeare biography. Like what? For example, we don't have personal journals or diaries, okay, or letters written from him or to him, and this is something strange. At least we want some diary for this great man, or a letter sent to him, or from him. So critics raise the question. And from this, we have suspicions about the idea that there's certain mystery behind this. Very little public record of him during his age. Another thing that puzzled the critics, the idea that very little information about his education. You know that when we discussed earlier that the idea he had, the records that we have, the official records, told us that he studied at Latin. Okay, he knew Latin in the grammar school. But when we trace the education of Shakespeare in the university, we didn't have any record that he attended any university. So the content, this about the biography, we have gaps in his biography. Now we'll move to another reason, which is something attributed or related to his plays. The critics realized that the content of the plays is so extensive. And this fact raises the doubts whether all plays could be written by one person. As you know, that Shakespeare wrote many plays divided into tragedies, comedies, histories, tragicomics, and romantic histories, romantic tragedies, etc. So the idea that the number written, it's difficult to be written by one person, and this it could be believable, but it raises some doubts and some questions. Okay, so this reason is about the number of the plays. We have also another a question about the authenticity of this writer. This issue began with the criticism of many fellow of Elizabethan writers at his age, during his time, during his lifetime, and we have, so this issue, the authorship question, is not new, okay? It is mentioned many years ago, even during the age of Shakespeare. We'll trace now the beginning of, or the history of this question, the authorship question. So the first thing we have this issue raised is in the Elizabethan age. Then this question, we have another debate on later on in the 18th century. There we have investigations about Shakespeare's authenticity, especially when we have James Wilmot in 1781. This person was a clergyman and a scholar, found appalling lack of record of the poet while researching him in Stratford. He was doing some kind of research in Stratford, and he realized that, okay, we have lack of record about this man. Another critic who raised this issue is Francis Bacon, who was by many critics believed to be the candidate for the real author. So many critics believe that Francis Bacon is the most popular. Of course, this is not certain. We said earlier, this is just a theory. We are not for sure that Francis Bacon or someone else. Also, in the 20th century, we have other critics who began arguing in support of Earl of Oxford. Okay, as you see, every theory raised a name, and this name, they argued that this person could be this one or someone else. Also, a more detailed case for Marlowe also was mentioned, and the idea that Marlowe is the real candidate was first mentioned in the 1950s. In the 21st century, still, Oxford, the Earl of Oxford, is the most popular candidate nowadays. We have every time we heard from time to time different names about the possible writer, the possible real writer. For example, we have some critics raising new candidates like Lord Brooke, and we have in 2007, for example, Mark Lyons issued a declaration of a reasonable doubt on the authorship of Shakespeare's work after the final Amentiny of I Am Shakespeare, performed in Christopher, England. And so, who are the alternative candidates? Let us summarize them. Some critics believe that Queen Elizabeth I is the real author, and she chose the name Shakespeare to write the names of all her plays under these names and all her works. And you know that Queen Elizabeth was fond of theater, and she had many incidents reported that she attended the the performance of the plays of Shakespeare. Another candidate is Christopher Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe is an Elizabethan dramatist who wrote 4 great tragedies. They were masterpieces like Dr. Faustus, The Jew of Malta, Tamburlaine, and Richard III. All the plays were great, and many critics realized a similarity between the style written in which Christopher Marlowe wrote his plays and the style of Shakespeare play. Another candidate is Francis Bacon. A group of critics believe that this man is the real person. All the works attributed to Shakespeare said to be written by Francis Bacon. And we have another person, Edward de Vere. So, is this important? In other words, why does it matter? Okay, why has the question of whether Shakespeare really did write the works? We have the issue is, okay, this debate for the past 200 years. Why this debate goes on, okay? So as I told you that this is very important because the greatest English writer is William Shakespeare. And if you try to say that this person, okay, is not a real name, there's someone else, you have to know who is this person. And I told you that we have different critics, and all these critics varied from one age to another, and the debate still goes on even to our present time. In other words, we are not sure that what the critics say is it true or no, okay? So this idea is very important because we have to know who is the real author. Until we have a valid evidence, we consider all these as theories and not real. In other words, we as students of English literature, we believe that, yes, there is William Shakespeare and that the great works written by this man are there, and all what is mentioned is mere theories, and we don't have valid evidence. So the idea is introduced for everyone, and you can imagine why this question important, because it really started our imagination to believe, to search who is the real person. Okay, for this is the general introduction about the authorship question. I wish that you understand the major groups and the major critics, and at least know what is meant by the Stratfordians and the anti-Stratfordians. And still, the argument is not settled. It's going on even to the 21st century. Thank you so much and see you next lecture. Okay, now I'm going to see the attendance. Please raise your hands.